We've been in an extended series on relationships. We talked about our relationship with ourselves and then our relationship with God. We talked about how those two relationships determine and affect all of our other relationships. We discussed friendship, dating, marriage. This morning we're moving to parenting. I'm calling this message Raising Adults. It's worth noting that Adam and Eve were created physically mature. They were adults. They weren't babies, they weren't children, they weren't teenagers, they were adults. Children come into this world as babies, but they're not supposed to remain babies. They become children, but they're not supposed to remain children. They become teenagers, but they're not supposed to remain teenagers. They're supposed to mature and become adult. Jesus came into this world as a baby, but he matured to adulthood. And then if you remember, he reappeared after he had been crucified and resurrected in that adult body. He ascended to heaven in that adult body. Since we will become like him, we will be mature in heaven. Now, this should be a comfort to many of you. What about babies lost in the womb or children who died early in life? That affects a lot of you. What about them? Well, in heaven, they'll be adults. They'll be adults. You will see them and know them. That was my child that didn't make it the 9 months, or that I buried at the age of whatever. And they will see you and know you. They will say, that's my mother and that's my father, assuming we both go to heaven. You say, why do you believe that? If you remember on Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus appeared. He was transfigured. He kind of shed his physical humanity, and they saw him in his glory. And he appeared with Elijah and Moses. Now, he took with him Peter, James, and John. And if you read the story, they all knew who Elijah and Moses were. Now, they hadn't seen their Facebook pages, okay? They had no photos of them. They had no natural reason to know who those two men were. But they instinctively did, just like that. That's where it'll be in heaven. So you'll be walking down the aisles of heaven. You'll go, that's the Apostle Paul. That's Peter. You'll know who they were, and they'll know who you are. Isn't that amazing? A great comfort. And what about if we're old? Same thing. If they're children and they die, they'll be adult. If they're babies when they die, they'll be adult. If they're teenagers when they die, they'll be adult. Now, what will be our eternal age, if you can use the word age, in heaven? It'll be the peak of our mental, emotional, and spiritual selves, and of our physical selves, again, if we can use that language for what we'll have in heaven. My best guess is that perfect age will be 68, almost turning 69. Now, I'm just kidding. I'm yet to peak mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but I promise you I peaked physically at least a couple years ago. The point is that God's plan for us, His goal for us, is maturity. If you have a child who doesn't mature, something's wrong with it. If you have a teenager who doesn't become an adult, something's wrong. Why? Because it's the natural, normal, and right thing for them to become adult, to mature. As parents, God doesn't want us raising children. He gives us children to turn into adults. You got to write that down. God doesn't want us raising children. He gives us children to turn into adults. When I became a grandfather, everybody says this. They mean well. It's just kind of a cute thing to say. Well, it's great being a grandfather. Said you can just spoil them and send them home. Well, last thing I want is a spoiled, rotten brat grandchild. The last thing on my agenda is spoiling my grandkids. My goal is to turn them into good human beings. The best that I have influence over that. Not to spoil them and send them home. What you do, I'll say this about raising kids. What you do for your grandchildren should be about their good, not yours. You're going to see today that a lot of our parenting isn't even about them. We think it is. We say it is. It's about us. We want to be the hero. We want to be the nice guy. We want to be the one they love and think is great. And so it cripples our parenting. And so rather than turning children into adults, we become one of the primary barriers for them becoming adults. Now I will begin with the truth about parenting. I've got 5 things to say. Number 1, none of us parent perfectly. None of us parent perfectly. By none, I mean none. I didn't, you won't, nobody else did. Ecclesiastes 7:20 says there's not a righteous man on earth who continually does good and who never sins. The word sin simply means to fall short or miss the mark. So even when I'm trying to be the dad I ought to be, I won't always be. Even when I'm trying to be the grandfather I ought to be, I won't always be. Why? Because I'm imperfect. Romans 3:23 says that we've all fallen short and continue to. James 3:2 reminds us that we all stumble in many ways. None of us did, none of us are, none of us will parent perfectly. Number 2, even if we were perfect parents, it wouldn't guarantee well-behaving kids. Even if we were perfect parents, it wouldn't guarantee well-behaving kids. People mistakenly think the Bible is a book of formulas whereby if we follow the formula, we get what we want. It isn't. That's not what the Bible is. We think, well, if I'll do this, then I'll get that. So if I put the right input into my child, I will always get the right output from that child. Now, I'm just telling you, that's not true. It just ain't so. You'll discover that formulas may sometimes work, but they don't always work. May sometimes, don't always. So don't be shocked when they don't. I put a verse in your outline that some mistakenly interpret as a formula verse. You've heard it all your lives. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he'll not depart from it. Now here's what that verse does not mean. It does not mean if we raise them right and in church, they'll never mess up. It doesn't mean that. And it doesn't mean if we raise them right and in church, if they mess up, they'll one day come back to God in church. It does not guarantee that. That's not what that verse is about. The way he should go is how God has wired that child up. Now, if you have multiple children, have you discovered that they're very different? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. You raised them the same way, and they're just very different. Why? Because God made them very different. So you got to raise that child the way he should go, and that other one the way she should go, according to how they're wired up. The way they should go is the way God made them to go. Now, this is a simplistic explanation, but it's like this. If God wired them up to be an artist, don't try to turn them into a football player. And if He wired them up to play basketball, don't try to turn them into an artist. You see what I'm saying? You're working against how God made them, not with it. That's what that verse is about. Train up a child in the way God has wired him, and he won't depart from it. Now, none of us parent perfectly, so cut yourself some slack. The Bible gives us principles to follow, but it offers no guarantees that our kids will turn out as we hoped if we do or don't do this or that. It's just not in there. Now, these next 3 points will make that more clear. Number 3, good parents can raise problem kids. Good parents can raise problem kids. And if you have much of a wide friendship circle, you know somebody. You know some couple, they were really good parents, but their child really went off the rails. How could that happen? Because it's not a formula. If I do the right thing, they will do the right thing. If I do this, they will do that. If I do these things the Bible tells me to do, then I will get exactly what I want them to do. It just ain't so. Hezekiah was one of the best kings in the Old Testament and men in the Old Testament. 2 Chronicles 31:20 tells us that he did what was good, right, and true before the Lord his God. A good, godly man. But he raised a wicked son. We just studied this recently in community groups. He raised Manasseh. 2 Kings 21:9 tells us that Manasseh seduced Judah to do evil more than the nations that God destroyed. So in other words, these wicked nations that were in the promised land that God destroyed and ran out of it, Manasseh led Judah, which was the better of the two tribes after they split, to do worse than they did. A good man raised a really bad kid. Number 4, bad parents can raise good kids. Bad parents can raise good kids. How many of you know one of those? I can think of one right now. A great kid was not raised by good parents at all. Hezekiah was great, but he raised terrible Manasseh. Manasseh raised a guy named Ammon. That was his son, Ammon, A-M-O-N, not Amnon, which you read elsewhere. Ammon. Ammon was so wicked that his own servants plotted and murdered him. Ammon was raising a son, Josiah, who at the age of 8 had to become the king of Israel, of Judah. And Josiah turned out to be one of the greatest kings in the whole string of Israel and Judah. He turned out to be a great, great guy. You can read about all that in 2 Chronicles 31:1 to 34:21. It would make sense if good parents raised good kids and bad parents, kids turned out bad. But the truth is, sometimes that's just not the case. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Some kids from birth or from an early age are a problem. They've come through this church. I mean, just from the early age, at the age of 2, you knew this kid was different from other kids. Other seemingly good kids get to a certain age, it may be teenager, maybe college years, it could be later in adulthood, when they become someone you never imagined they would ever be. And some of you have raised that child. Right now, they may have nothing to do with you. I don't know, that may or may not be the case. But who they become is just shocking based on who you tried to raise them to be. In parenting, as in the circumstances of life, Solomon tells us in Ecclesiastes 9:11 that sometimes time and chance overtakes us all. It's just how things work out. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just how they work out. Adam and Eve raised 3 kids, remember? Firstborn, Cain. Cain murdered the secondborn, Abel, because he was jealous of him. Remember that? And then they had a 3rd child, Seth, who carried on the family line that Jesus would eventually be born into. First child, bad. Second child, great. Cain killed him because he was jealous over Abel's righteous worship. 3rd child, good. All 3 kids raised the same. Great or bad, great, good. So you've raised kids and they hadn't all turned out the same. And here's the thing. It may have had nothing to do with anything you did. You may have a kid today who's a gigantic mess who brings you a whole lot of pain. And it may not be your fault at all. At all. None of us parent perfectly. So you say, well, I didn't do a perfect job parenting. Welcome to the human race. Even if we did, parenting perfectly offers no guarantees our kids will all turn out as we hope they would. Good parents can raise problem kids. Bad parents can raise good kids. Time and chance overtake us all. Now here's the 5th thing. The children of the only perfect parent messed up. The children of the only perfect parent messed up. Only 2 people had a perfect parent. That was Adam and Eve. And they end up distrusting and disobeying God. You read about that in Genesis 3:1 to 13. Listen closely. Listen real closely. This should be healing to a lot of you. A lot of parents, most parents, carry grief over who a child has become or of that child not becoming all that that parent sought to raise them to be. I'll say that again. A lot of parents, most parents, carry grief over a child who became something they never raised them to be, or who has never become all they raised them to be. So one, you live really deeply grieved because of what they're doing. The other, you live with a constant low-grade grief because even though they're not terrible, they're not what you'd raised them to be. That ought to be life-giving to some of you. The truth is, you might have done a really good job parenting, but they just chose a different life. Quit beating yourself up. Great kids, listen to this. It's possible that they're great, but it's not because of how well you parented, but in spite of how poorly you did. So if your kids are behaving well, which usually means they're young, they hadn't really been tested yet. If they're behaving well, you might need to just step down off that high horse. Because the story's not finished yet, is it? A bad kid like me might end up being a real good kid. And a good kid might end up being a real bad kid. If you've known people, you've seen both of those take place. They now choose for themselves how they wish to live, no matter how you raised them. What we instinctively think is it's my fault. If I had done this, or that, if I hadn't have done this, or that, they would be well-behaved, good functioning adults. I wish we could guarantee that, but we just can't. You don't know. Could you have done a better job? We all could have. You know, people come after services on marriage and child raising. They'll say, boy, I wish I'd known that 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I'll say, me too. I didn't know everything I'm telling you. My kids were 4 and 8. Things I've learned along the way. The bottom line is that hopefully we did the best we knew how to do. And ultimately, whatever we did, good or bad, they have chosen how they would live. I chose to live completely against how I was raised. Had nothing to do with my parents. My mom later became a Christian. My sister later became a Christian. My dad was dead. But it had nothing to do with my raising. I made my own choice that I would not be like the people I came from. And so your kids do the same thing. Don't mistake grief for guilt. We can't cure grief. If your child is not who you hoped, prayed, worked, wished them to be, you're going to have grief. It's normal. You can't cure normal. But don't mistake grief for guilt. If I feel bad, I must have done something wrong. You may not have. I mean, you didn't do everything right. None of us did. But there may have been no fatal flaws in your parenting. That child, for whatever reason, just decided to take a different path. So were you a perfect parent? No. Are there bad choices? Are their bad choices your fault? Maybe not at all. So that ought to give some of us a whole new perspective on what to do with our adult children, especially, who aren't who we wish them to be. Now let's talk about the difference between raising children and adults. Raising children and adults. It's 2 entirely different skills with 2 entirely different goals. There's a huge difference of raising children who may or may not grow up and raising adults who are children you trained to grow up. Now this list is not exhaustive, but here are 5 significant differences. Number 1, raising children is about now. Raising adults is about their future. Raising children is about now. Raising adults is about their future. What they're doing, how they feel about you, and how you feel about them, and how you feel about yourself. That's how you raise children. They're unhappy. If they're unhappy, I'm unhappy. I have to make them happy so they'll be happy so I can be happy. That's what parents raising children do. Raising adults, on the other hand, is about your child's future. What kind of person you want them to become. So look at what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, you speak like a child, think like a child, reason like a child. That's okay. But when I became a man, I did away with childish things. Again, it's appropriate for your child to act its age. Appropriate for a teenager to be a teenager. It's not appropriate for either one of them not to eventually become adults. As I said earlier, God's intention is for us to mature in every way. In 1 Corinthians 3:1-3 and Hebrews 5:12-14, there are rebukes for those who have not spiritually matured. Why? Because you're supposed to mature physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. In Matthew 5:48, 1 Corinthians 14:20, Ephesians 4:13-14, Colossians 1:28 are all about nurturing or maturing, growing up, being complete, or being perfect. Perfect being the word for us becoming who we were made to be. It doesn't mean sinless perfection. We learn in Galatians 6:7 that we reap what we sow, but the truth is we reap later than we sow. We sow now, we reap later. That's true of most bad things. You can do the wrong thing, and right now it may not cost you anything, but it will. You can do the right thing, and right now it might not benefit you anything, but it will later. You reap later. Here's what I don't want you to miss. We do, in this verse, we do what we do now for what we will hopefully get later. We do what we do now for what we will hopefully get later. We give our lives to Christ in the hopes of heaven. We serve the Lord in the hopes of reward. And the list could go on and on and on. So when you're raising your kids, you're doing what you're doing now in hope that later you will get this kind of adult child. They'll be the person you want them to be. Raising children is about now. Raising adults is about the future. Here's number 2. Raising children is about what they want. Raising adults is about what they need. All of our wanters are messed up by sin. Working properly, you would want God and His will more than anything and anyone in this world. You'd want it more than the girl or guy of your dreams. You'd want it more than $5 trillion billion. You'd want it more than to be the king of the whole earth. But your wonder is so messed up that you want all kinds of things, lesser things, not what God would have you want. So because we're broken, instead we want pleasure, we want possessions, we want people, we want power, and that list could go on. Listen closely. Most people will displease God in a second for the approval of others or for their own benefit or pleasure. Most people will disobey God in a second for the approval of others or for their own benefit or pleasure. Now, why do we do that? Because that's how broken our wanters are. We want what we ought not want. And we don't want what we ought to want. And the younger you are, the more messed up your wanter is. Agreed? I mean, your children, wouldn't they just eat candy if you'd let them? Just give them candy. Give them chocolate. So we'll just raise this kid on chocolate. See how it goes. They don't know what they should want. That's why they're little bitty and you're big. That's why they start with no experience and you have experience. So you can decide what they need versus what they want. They will want things that will eventually hurt them. They don't know what they should want, so the parent has to discern what they actually need. Now look at Proverbs 29:15. A child who gets his own way brings shame to his mother. You want to have a disappointing child when you grow up? Give them everything they want. This is an interesting, I've read an article years ago. It is said that the parent who gives the child everything they want, trying to make them happy, wanting them to love the parent, that ultimately those children end up hating their parents. Isn't that interesting? And that's based on a survey. Just the opposite of what you'd think. Raising children's like the Hotel California. This could be heaven, this could be hell. Again, they can choose how they're going to turn out, but we can do things to precipitate that and help them to come out the wrong way. Proverbs 10:1 and 17:25 are two other verses about children bringing grief to their parents. More than a few parents have raised children who brought them far more grief than they ever did joy. Imagine your child, okay, just yesterday, I guess, up in Michigan, I think, somebody walks into a Walmart with a knife and stabs 11 people. Imagine that's your child. Or your child takes a gun, like did on a college campus recently, and shoots and kills a 14-year-old. That's your child. Or your child walks in and shoots up a school, or whatever else it might be. Let me ask you a question. Are you feeling sorrier for your child and your loss, or for the parents of all those other people and their loss? That'll tell you a whole lot about yourself. Your greatest grief should not be the shot that maybe a cop shot and killed them. Your greatest grief ought to be that they took the life of somebody else who was innocent. So our wonders are just all broken up. And when we give kids what they want, the Bible says it's not going to go well. Now listen closely. Those of you who have some money, it's a good thing we were raising our girls, we didn't have any money. So we couldn't spoil them financially if we wanted to. You remember the days that old Charlie's used to have children's meal on Monday night with kids eat free? That's our night out to eat because we couldn't afford it otherwise. And so we didn't have that problem when we were little. Some of you, all of you have more money than I had at that age with your kids. Probably very few of you did not. And the more money is not an asset to raising your kids, it's a liability. We could easily say we can't afford it. You can't. So you got to be mature enough to say, you know what? We could afford it, but that would not be a good thing to do. We will not do it. And then what your child or your teenager going to do? Tell me. They're going to get mad at you. They're going to pout. You kids, you teenagers, listen up. If you'll listen through this series, you'll figure out how good your parents are. And some of you will discover that you got great parents that you didn't think were. And a few of you may discover you thought your mom and dad's great because they gave you everything, and it's not good for you. They're not being great parents. And I'll tell you why they do that here in a minute. Give a child everything he wants, you'll live to regret it. You'll see in a moment that we do that. When we do that, it's about the emptiness of the parent's soul and the parent's need for approval. Write this down somewhere. If you need them, you can't lead them. If you need them, you can't lead them. You can't lead people that you need the approval of. Because you won't do the right thing, you'll do the convenient thing. You'll do what makes you popular. And you'll make the bad decision many times. Now here's number 3. Raising children is about their present happiness. Raising adults is about their future character. Raising children is about their present happiness. Raising adults is about their future character. God's intention for us, again, is maturity. Colossians 1:28, Paul says that everything he does to present every man complete in Christ, mature. Jesus tells us in Matthew 5:48 that we're to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. That word perfect is the Greek word teleos. It means mature. It means that you become everything God wanted you to be. When Jesus was on the cross, what did he say? It is finished. What he said was one word, teleos, complete, done. I came to die for man's sin. I've done it. I came to pay the price. I've done it. That's what it means to be complete, to be mature. It's come to its intended end. Parents who raise children are committed to their child's present happiness. If they're unhappy, those parents do whatever is in their power to make that child happy right now. Am I in the right room? And you see this in public. You see it in grocery stores when they want candy, or you see it in a department store where they want a toy. And the kid, I want this, and then they start pitching what we used to call a hissy fit. I hope that's not a bad word, but anyway, they pitch a hissy fit. If they're little, they do the collapso. They hit the floor and kind of quadruple their body weight. And you're trying to pick them up, and they're whining and they're screaming. And you know what they're doing? They're working you. They're showing you who's the boss. And most parents are going to get them what they want to shut them up. Am I in the right room? I can't tell you how many places I've been when I wanted to adopt a child for about 5 minutes. I thought, you know what? I could cure that real fast. And all you're going to do is feed it. Why? Because you're raising a child. You're raising somebody to manipulate you. And that's exactly what they do. They're manipulating you. A 2-year-old will manipulate you. You think, well, when they're 15 or 16, I'll have to watch out for this. No. When they're 2, they can manipulate you. So these sinful children with their shattered wanters hold parents hostage. We've probably all seen it. On the other hand, parents who are raising adults are willing to endure present happiness of their child to develop future character. They're crying, and I'd do this. I'd say, you know what? I know you're upset. It's okay to cry. Go to your room. You're not going to cry here in front of us. And don't go to your room and wail. If I hear some wailing going on, which is another form of punishing the parent, am I in the right room? Then I will come in and give you something to wail about. So if I did that, my kids would hate me. Mine adore me. I think you got it all backwards. I was trying to turn my 2 girls into good adults. If your job's to keep them happy right now, you're losing. You got to sacrifice present happiness for future character. Has anybody in this room discovered that life doesn't turn out the way you wished it would? A lot. That's what you prepare them for. A lot of kids don't know what it means not to get their way, not to get whatever they want. They're about to be in for a real shock. Their marriage has no chance of making it. They likely won't be able to keep a job because they think the whole world centers around you. You need to teach them that the world does not center around you. It centers around Jesus. My world doesn't center around you. It centers around Jesus. And I'm trying to teach you and raise you that yours will too, because that's what you were made for. So raising adults, you seek to do the right thing, not the convenient thing, which is what makes them happy right now, child or teenager. These kind of parents let their children struggle. They let them fail and learn from it, rather than rescuing them and bail them out. Say, well, if my kid's out, he's high school and got those bad guys, he's drinking, he's in jail, what do? Leave him. Don't teach them that whatever they do, Daddy will bail them out. And when you go get them out, you know why you're getting it out? Probably not for their sake, it's for yours. Because you care more about how you look and feel than you care about what they might learn if they actually pay a price for something they've done. How many of you have done some dumb things, paid a heavy price, and come to the conclusion, I ain't going to do that again? Come on. It's an incredible learning tool to pay a price. So they don't give their child relief. They seek to teach them coping skills. Well, that's what happens. You got to figure out how to deal with it. Who that child becomes is more important to them than what that child feels right now. You've heard me say this all the time. And I'll say it many more times in this series. Your goal is not for your children to think that you're the greatest. Your goal is for everybody else to think your children is the greatest. That they're the greatest. If other people think your kids are great, write this down somewhere. You're pretty good. But if your kids think you're great and everybody else knows they're brats, I ain't going to ask you parents to raise your hand, but how many of you parents have your child has some friend you don't want in your house? They're brats. And some of you kids go to school with kids, you know they're brats. They're selfish, they're arrogant, they're disrespectful. They hadn't been raised. They've been doing the raising. Somebody years ago came to America. This was 50 years ago. He said, I've never seen a country where the children raise the parents. Here's number 4. Raising children is failing to realize that they belong to God, not me. Raising children is realizing that they belong to God, is failing to realize they belong to God, not me. So when I'm raising children, I've forgotten who they belong to. They're not ours, they're the Lord's. Look, Colossians 1:16. All things, now all means all. That means everything, it means everybody. All things have been created through Him, through Jesus, and for Him. Your children weren't made for you. They weren't even made for themselves. They were made for Him. God created your child for Himself and what He wants, not for you and what you want. Not for them and what they want, but for Him and what He wants. Psalm 100 verse 3 tells us that it's the Lord who made us. Goes on to say we're the sheep of His pasture. In Jeremiah 1:5 we discover that He knew us before He formed us in our mother's womb. So what that means is our children were His before they were ever ours. You see it? They were His. He formed them. There wasn't a fetus yet. Before they were formed physically, He made them and they were His. And He gave them to you. And it's your responsibility to turn them into adults. Now here's what I believe. You young people, you might want to close your ears because all your parents want grandkids. If we understood the responsibility of raising a child, most of us wouldn't sign up for it. Now think about this. Here's the God of heaven who makes this child. He looks over all of history, looks over every couple that's ever existed, and decides, I'm giving this one to you to raise for me. Who in their right mind would sign up for that? Children are a responsibility. They're not a perk. They're a job. They're not a benefit. They're work. And if you don't understand that, you've never had any, obviously. If they were yours, you might raise them as you're pleased, but they're not yours, they're His, and you're to raise them to please Him. You're stewards, you're managers. It's like a bank manages people's money. It's not His money. We're stewards of these kids. They're not really our kids. They're God's kids. They were His before they were ours. And what's His goal? His goal is maturity. His goal is character. His goal is not their present happiness. If you think God's goal for your life is your present happiness, you're in for a real disappointment. Because He'll let you go through trials. He'll seem to hide Himself. He's doing something. He's working something out. He's trying to mature you. But if you think God's goal is your goal, which is I want to be happy right now and at every moment in my life, you're going to be real disappointed with God. Because His goal is not your happiness. His goal is your holiness, your character. Here's the 5th one. Raising children is about you. Raising adults is about them and God. Raising children is about you. Raising adults is about them and God. Here's what I mean. When you raise children, you're not pleasing God and you're doing them a disservice. When you don't raise a kid to grow up, you have hurt your own child in the name of love and trying to help them and make them happy. Watch this. You think that you're doing what you're doing for their happiness, but the truth is you're doing it for your own. When you do everything you can to make your kids happy all the time, relieve any stress, cure any sadness, whatever else, you don't do that for their sake. You do it for your own. For your own. Raising children exposes our own emptiness and immaturity. If you can't be happy with them being unhappy, you're not a very mature person. You've got to be able to be happy when they're not. So we do whatever we will to make them happy, because them being unhappy, what? Makes us unhappy. You see it? It's not just caring more about their present happiness than who they become. It's caring more about our present happiness than who they become. I don't want them to be mad at me. I want them to think that I love them, that I'm a good parent. And so I do what I ought not do, and they stay in control. And I set them up for a world that's going to severely disappoint them. Someone said, kind of jokingly, but not completely, that essentially everybody in college is in therapy. Years ago, if you went to Carson Newman College, it may still be there. If you get stressed out, they've got a room you can go to and play with puppies. Kids that age went to World War I and II. But kids back then, they weren't coddled. But now we coddle them, we teach them no coping skills, and then they grow up and they're a mess. They have no idea how to deal with not getting their way. They don't have no idea how to deal with something being hard or difficult or requiring real work. Make no mistake about it, parenting poorly now so they won't be mad at you is going to result in a lifetime of grief for them and for you. A mature adult child will bring you joy and satisfaction. An immature, should be an adult but still a child, will bring you pain and maybe shame. Again, your goal in parenting is not their present happiness. It's not your present happiness. It's their maturity. It's their maturity. Genesis 1:26 tells us who we were made to be. We're made to bear God's image and likeness. Romans 8:29 now tells us that God's trying to make us like His Son, mature, perfect, complete. Ephesians 2:10 and other verses tell us that there's things that God made us to do that He planned for us to do before He put us in our mother's wombs. That should be our goal in parenting. The goal is not for them to feel good or for us to feel good. The goal is for them to become good, to become the people God made them to be. Now, 3 things and we're done. What if I've blown it? What if I've blown it? And some of you have blown it. Number 1, if you've blown it, own it. If you've blown it, own it. Some of you did. Maybe you didn't know any better. It's pretty common for people, again, as I said, to come up to me and say, well, I wish I'd known that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and I'll say, me too. Unless you learn and grow, watch this, you repeat how you were raised or you go the other way. So if you felt like you were raised too hard, you're either going to raise your kids hard or you're going to raise them soft. You almost never go to the middle where there's balance. And some of you may have been raised soft and you realize that wasn't a good thing and you pendle them over here and now you're too tough on your kids. There's a balance out there in the middle. If you were abused, you become an abuser. It's what's normal. Or you never discipline a child because you had it so hard. And what you end up doing damages the child almost as much as being abused. Both styles are wrong, bad and not good for your child. Healthy parenting exists in the middle. It's possible, because that's people who didn't know any better. Some of you knew better. You just didn't do better. If that's you, own it. Quit denying it. Some of you need to just say, you know what? I was not a good parent. I was absent physically or emotionally. I was too harsh. I was too soft. Whatever you were. Own it. Own it. Denial doesn't serve you, doesn't serve your children well. So if you blew it, admit it. If you've blown it, own it. After sin with Bathsheba, David prayed to God in Psalm 51:4, against you, you only have I sinned. Our sin is always primarily against God. Watch this. If I have parented poorly, I have indeed sinned against my children, but my real sin is against God. He gave them to me to parent for Him. David clearly sinned against Bathsheba, her husband whom he had killed, his other wives, which he shouldn't have had, and his children. Your sin always affects others, just as your adult children's sin affects you. David did own his sin, though. Told Nathan in 2 Samuel 12:13 that he had sinned against the Lord. God is not only willing to forgive you, He wants to forgive you. Jesus died on this cross so that He could forgive you. So He tells us in 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and righteous to forgive us. Now, God's forgiveness is not a promise that if you ask His forgiveness, all your problems get solved, all the mess you made gets unscrambled. It's not that. But it does repair your relationship with Him. With Him. Number 2, if you're messing up, correct it. If you're messing up, correct it. As I speak on this over the next several weeks, some of you, if you're willing to see, are going to realize you're not doing this the way you ought to be doing it. Don't ignore what you hear. Make a mid-course correction. In 2 Corinthians 6:2, it says, now is the day of salvation. What does that mean? It means that if you're doing the wrong thing, right now is the time to do the right thing. One of the awesome things about God is that we can be doing the wrong thing, and at any point we can say, stop, I'm going to do the right thing now. And we can make our lives better. The right time to do the right thing is as soon as you learn what the right thing is. The right time to do the right thing is as soon as you learn what the right thing is. So if you've heard something this morning that you need to correct by 2 today, you need to have a conversation with your spouse and maybe your child and correct it. Do it now. Do it now. Let me say this. I'll talk about this more later. What I see a whole lot of, because there's so many divorced families, is what I call deficit parenting. We've hurt our children through our divorce, so we can't hurt them anymore. So that parent parents very differently from a couple who never breaks up. They just do. They parent from a deficit. We owe them. Let me tell you, no matter what's happened in the past, no matter how many bad mistakes you made, what your child needs is a good parent. A good parent right now. Whatever you did then is then. Right now, you could start being the kind of parent you ought to be and doing the things you ought to do. If you're messing up, correct it. Here's the third one. If you've messed it up, try to make it right. Or try to make it up. If you've messed it up, try to make it up. By making it up, I mean making it right. Truth be told, most of us have adult children who are not living as we wish they were. Some are a little off course. Some are a lot off course. Again, their being off course may not have anything to do with the way you've raised them. But it might. But it might. And if you'll be honest before God, He'll show you if it is. So if that's true, if you really blew it and you're really owning it, now you got to go to them and admit it. Jesus tells in Matthew 5:23, if you're presenting your offering there at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, then come and present your offering. Get it right now. Get it right next thing. If something wasn't done right, go and try to fix it. Some of you need to go to your adult children and admit that you parented them poorly. It may sound something like one of these. When I was raising you, I wasn't a Christian or I wasn't really walking with the Lord. Looking back, I realized I made a lot of mistakes for which I'm deeply sorry. Had I known or been better, I would have been a far better father or mother. I've asked God to forgive me for my failure, and He has. And now I'm asking you, could you possibly find it in your heart to forgive me? If you're in any way abusive, physically, mentally, emotionally, physically to your kids, it might sound something like this. I've recently come to realize some of how I've failed you as a father or a mother. I grew up in an abusive household, and I went on to commit the same terrible sins against you. I am deeply sorry for the things I did and said. I've asked God to forgive me, and He has. And I'm asking you today, could you possibly find it in your heart to forgive me? Now here's what they're going to say. Oh, you weren't that bad. And then you say, could you possibly find it in your heart to forgive me? Well, I didn't think you did all that bad a job. Could you possibly find it in your heart to forgive me? You want them to say yes. You have no idea how this might impact your relationship with your child and their life. Because they may be doing a whole lot of what they're doing out of bitterness and anger from what happened to them as a child. Genuine humility and repentance can have a powerful effect on people. Most people have never had anybody tell them, I was wrong. Would you forgive me? People say, I'm sorry, but they'll say, I was wrong. I failed. Would you forgive me? Listen closely. Doing what you should do is no guarantee that your relationship with your adult child will get fixed. The guarantee is that things will be better than they are now. You'll be better than you are now. You hear me say this often. We're to do the right thing, not for what we get from it, but for who we become by it. Say, will this repair my relationship with my son? I don't know, but it'll make you a better man. Will this repair my relationship with my daughter? I don't know, but it'll make you a better woman. Last thing. Romans 12:18 tells us, if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. You cannot be at peace with someone who doesn't want to be at peace with you. And that can include a parent, it can include a spouse, it can include a child. So some of you may go to your grave without ever regaining a relationship with an adult child. It's possible. Both of you have to want it. But you can be at peace with God, and you can be at peace with yourself.